Welcome to our 5-minute takeaway sessions presented by the Guild of Letting and Management. My name is Susie Crolla. I'm Managing Director of the Guild of Letting and Management. Continuing on from our last takeaway session, we're going to look at the Section 13 notice, but this time consider the proposed changes under the Renters' Rights Bill. The Renters' Rights Bill, as we know, is currently progressing through Parliament, and it proposes some significant changes to the way in which rent increases are implemented, with the aim of providing enhanced protection for tenants and much more increased transparency. So the key proposals affecting the Section 13 process include the following. The first is the abolition of assured short-hold tenancies. Now, we're very much aware that the bill proposes to abolish assured short-hold tenancies, replacing them with a single system of periodic tenancies. This actually means that all tenancies will become periodic from the outset, removing the fixed term element. The second point that we need to consider is the frequency of the rent increases under the bill. This seeks to limit the rent increases to once per year, formalising what is currently best practice. Now, this restriction will be statutory and apply regardless of any clauses in existing or pre-existing tenancy agreements. The next element relates to extending notice requirements. Landlords will be required to give a minimum of 2 months' notice of a proposed increase compared to 1 month notice under the current regime. Now, the increased notice period will provide tenants with more time to consider the proposal and, if necessary, refer the matter to the first-tier tribunal. So the next element relates to the strengthened tribunal access. Tenants will retain the right to challenge proposed increases at the FTT. Now, this reinforces the fact that only market rent-based increases will be permitted, and that landlords will be prohibited from using rent increases as a retaliatory tactic or as a method of actually forcing tenants to leave the property. The next is additional protections. So this point relates to the fact that landlords will be prevented from using rent increases as a substitute for eviction under the new regime that will abolish Section 21 no-fault evictions. What this means is that if a tribunal finds that the rent increase is not aligned with market values, it may impose an alternative rent which must be adhered to by both parties. Now, there are some practical considerations for both landlords and tenants to bear in mind. The first of which is that rent increases should be reasonable. They should be evidenced by market data and ideally agreed with the tenant informally before relying on the Section 13. So some excellent practice would be to have a discussion before completion of the Section 13. The next point is communication and record keeping. These are crucial. Tenants should be provided with sufficient justification for any rent increase. The next element applies to landlords who really need to avoid this approach of retaliatory eviction using the Section 13 as an instrument to prevent tenants from wanting to live at a property. So in conclusion, the Section 13 procedure remains an essential legal tool for landlords to adjust rent in line with the market. However, moving forward, it will be governed by very strict statutory requirements and must be used with care to avoid invalidation or the fact that the tenant could challenge the increase at the first-tier tribunal. Once enacted, the bill will reinforce the tenant protections, introduce longer notice periods, and transition all tenancies to a periodic model thereby standardising the rent increase process across the private rented sector. Thank you for listening to today's session. For further information on the services we offer, head over to our website and subscribe to our channel. I look forward to seeing you next time.